That's probably the first person I've ever seen using my own stick company at. That was surreal. That was probably the best moment one of the moments I have probably ever had in my life.
Welcome to episode 129 of The Route, presented by White Whale Marketing. The Route is a sports podcast with a new guest every episode as they share their experiences and route in sports. I'm Christopher Nascimento, and let's get started. As always, just a couple things to cover before we get into today's guest. If you haven't already, take a moment and follow the podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see at the top end corner here, underneath The Route, it says at The Route Sports. So we're on all major social media platforms, including LinkedIn. So for those of you that are listening, that's a good chance you're into sports business. Check out LinkedIn. It's a great way to grow your network, expand your network, and even just maybe maintain it, right? A lot of those people that are kind of just interested in the similar things that you are following us there. And then we're also on all those traditional platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc., where you can find clips and magazine covers of when our episodes released. So check us out at The Route Sports on all platforms. And one more thing to get into is just in regards to subscribing to the podcast. We're on all major podcasting platforms for audio. That's Google, Apple, Spotify, and I think 7 others. And then for video, we're on YouTube. We're underneath the White Whale Marketing YouTube channel. So that's White Whale MKTG. And we have the Route playlist where you can see about, I think, the last 60 episodes have been on video. So check us out there. Follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars, all that good stuff, as it allows the podcast to grow a little bit easier. And now, before we get into today's guest, just a quick message from our friends at BetStamp.
Damn it, I lost another bet. I always do this. Why can't I win at least one?
Need an edge in sports betting? BetStamp allows you to compare the best available odds among sports books. To get an edge in sports betting, download the BetStamp app and use the code WHALE to get access to all the affiliates and pricing. The only way to get an edge in online sports betting is by having accounts with multiple sports books.
Yes.
BetStamp.
Now, with that taking place, we can now get into today's guest. I'd like to welcome someone who's making a splash in the sports world. Not only do they play hockey at a high level, but they're now making sure that anyone can in the future as well. President at Swift Hockey, Zechariah Thomas. Welcome to The Route. How's it going?
Good. You?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm excited to get into this episode, and ever since I kind of saw your profile on LinkedIn, I kind of wanted to know more.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So the way the podcast goes, it's called The Route. So maybe you can tell us how you kind of, fell in love with hockey, how you got into sports, and then how you got into the position you are in today.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, growing up in Oshawa, it's a pretty big hockey town. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but I moved there at the age of 13, and kind of just growing up and being new to the schools and that type of stuff, everything was just really hockey oriented due to the Oshawa Generals, the OHL team. So the kids at lunch were playing mini sticks and all of that, and I was kind of wondering what the sport was and kind of learning to grow. So I asked my parents to kind of help me get started at a young age, and they helped me the best they could, kind of put me in figure skating lessons and that type of stuff so I could learn how to skate before actually learning how to play hockey. Yeah, then basically kind of growing up, I went through the levels, AAA, AA, AE, and kind of going upwards towards then and seeing kind of the struggles within the hockey game and how it's really unaffordable to a sense. And I've seen a lot of people deal with a lot of issues, just kind of lack of equipment and kind of hard to just afford equipment in a sense.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's funny enough that you mentioned that, because I think last week, I forget if it was Bar Down or TSN, one of those, and they're just at, I think, Pro Hockey Life, and they're just kind of going through, hey, if you were to purchase, a full set of brand new at Pro Hockey Life, how much it would cost you. I think they did one for goalies, and I think it's about $15,000. And that's before
exactly.
If you painted your mask. And then I think they did it for players as well. I don't remember what the number was, but obviously it was a couple $1,000s. So clearly, there's an issue there because, soccer, you go to a store, get cleats for, I'm sure as low as $40 and you can kind of play from there. So there's a barrier of entry. But before we kind of get into that, do you mind maybe like if we run through the beginning and then we kind of get into Swift talking a bit more from there?
Yeah, for sure.
So what I was going to ask then, right? You're talking about just the passion for the Oshawa Generals and then just kind of playing from that standpoint. Is that something where you started playing only at 13 when you're in Oshawa?
So I started playing at 10. And that was the age that I moved to Oshawa, and that's kind of when I got into figure skating and that type of stuff to kind of learn just how to skate at the beginning. And then just kind of growing up, it went through this lower levels, kind of AE to kind of get me started, then AA, and then at the end I ended up being in AAA level. Then after the AAA level, I went to like a prep school called Okanagan.
Okay.
And then that was kind of getting me a taste of, I guess, kind of how the junior hockey lifestyle is with like traveling and the flights and that type of stuff. And then after I kind of played all over the place. I played in Florida, Connecticut after that, just junior hockey. And then I played up in Brampton for a bit. And then kind of ending my career, I played major junior up in Quebec.
Yeah. And I guess before then, you're just talking about the aspect of getting to figure skating. I'm assuming just to kind of improve your abilities. What was that like, right? Were you a teenager doing figure skating?
No, like I was still pretty young because I know if it's different. It was all girl oriented. There was no males in my class, so I was still pretty young at an age where it wasn't looking too different for me to kind of be in that.
Sure. But I'm sure like the skill set that you're then getting, right, from figure skating just helped translate to going to a prep school or something like that.
Exactly. So the figure skating was completely kind of getting me good on balance wise and that type of stuff. And then after taking figure skating at a young age, I got more into like hockey skating and that type of sort of sense with local trainers and that type of stuff. And then kind of started growing from there.
Yeah. So from there, right, you're then just developing. Obviously, you're getting better at hockey, and then you're then touching about going to a prep school, especially Okanagan. I'm assuming that's out in BC, right? How does that come about? Because I remember I was in high school once. They had an open house, I think it was called, for universities, colleges, and even just boarding high schools, I think is the name of it. I remember I was talking to some, and then just them kind of sharing how you had to play 2 sports, you had to have this amount of study time, so on and so forth. What was it like being in a prep school, and do you think it maybe, like applied things to you that you now, are able to use every single day?
Yeah, exactly. So the prep school I was in, it was Okanagan, but it was their actually brand new first year based out in Whitby.
Okay.
So based out in a smaller town, not too far from home. So I was still able to kind of live at home. But the traveling we had to do, it was like the first time I ever really traveled to PEI and Nova Scotia, and obviously back to Okanagan where their base is at. But it was just a big kind of welcome to kind of just how hockey really is at higher levels.
So, and what is it like at that level, right? Is it something where is it that much different than playing, AA hockey, or is it something just with the travel aspect and then just kind of maybe balancing school and hockey, that's where it really kind of takes it to another level?
Yeah, it was pretty hard. It was more so the balance of the school was also pretty hard, and also it was nonstop practices right after school. So every day there wasn't really a day that we didn't have gym and workout, and then obviously sometimes run and then video, and then also obviously our ice time. So it was pretty difficult kind of getting used to that schedule at the start, but obviously growing me into what you have to deal with at higher levels in the game.
Sure. And then I guess while you're going through school, is that something where, recently I've been like having Olympians on the podcast and just talking about, the different, ways that to either focus just on their sport, or then some of them are even just looking at, hey, I kind of knew that playing this sport wouldn't get me far necessarily professionally, so I kind of had to start focusing on school. Was that something, being at a prep school for hockey, your only focus was hockey, or were you also then looking at, hey, I'd like to maybe get into business one day and then start looking into that direction, or were you more focus on one rather than the other?
So honestly, growing up, like during those ages, I was pretty big entrepreneur and always selling stuff, selling shoes, selling clothes, and selling kind of whatever I can get my hands on through just the marketplaces like Facebook and that type of stuff. And then
Yeah.
I kind of started drop shipping, and that's where I kind of this whole idea about Swift and all of that kind of came in together because I got more knowledge about like e-commerce and that type of world.
And is that something that all the way back to high school you're getting involved with that stuff?
Yeah, so I started kind of just selling like the littler stuff, like hats and shoes and that type of stuff at around like 9, 10 years old.
Hmm.
And then I ended up actually getting suspended from school, elementary school, because I don't think you're not allowed to sell, I
Wait,
guess, like small hats.
you got suspended for selling a hat at school?
Yeah. I got suspended for selling hats and like little necklaces and that type of stuff from elementary school. And it was kind of different because some of the teachers were being weird and some of the teachers were actually like proud of me and
Yeah.
helping me, you know what I mean? So it was kind of a weird thing that the school didn't want me to kind of make my little money at a little age. So
Yeah. Is it because you were making money that's the thing they had the issue with, or just more so just like I'm just kind of curious, like that standpoint. If I were to like be in the position of, let's say your parents, for example, you get a call and it's, hey, your kid's getting suspended because of, he's selling XYZ on property. Automatically, like, oh, if they're getting suspended, they're selling something illegal. When you think of it's just, hey, it's a necklace, it's a T-shirt, it's, a hat. I think a lot of times when you hear stories about, successful business people, they kind of had that mentality or something like that at a young age. So it's kind of crazy to just think of they'd almost kind of be shutting that and kind of putting you in a corner and be like, hey, like, don't do this. Like, don't kind of look into your passions or something like that.
yeah, it was really weird. It was really weird. At least my parents weren't upset at all about what I was doing. They were actually supporting me, kind of driving me to get the hats and the necklaces and that type of stuff so I could sell it back at school. So they weren't too upset when the teachers and the principals called trying to suspend me and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. That's such a wild story. And I guess moving on from there, you said then, I guess once that happened, you're like, hey, maybe I should start selling elsewhere rather than school. And you started looking into drop shipping. So how does that work? Obviously, that was something in the last few years that's kind of picked up some steam. But what types of ways did you initially spark that? Was it something you saw a video and you're like, hey, like, let me give this a try? Or was it something that like, hey, I want to find a way to make money online?
Yeah, so it was kind of more so a big thing of kind of just making money at home. It was kind of a big thing due to COVID. I started taking more serious because I didn't really have hockey to play around with and kind of put my time, energy into there. So obviously I was still selling shoes and that type of stuff back then, but as soon as COVID kind of started, did a lot of YouTube research into drop shipping, online school, and just kind of knowledge on just online making money. And that was kind of the only thing that kind of got my mind and seemed more in my books.
Yeah, and obviously, I'm sure it's way more difficult because I know I've looked into stuff like that too in the past. What's one thing? Let's say someone's listening and they're like, "Hey, like I don't know, whether it's a university student or someone who's looking for a passion on the side. What's maybe like the first few steps? You're like, hey, at the very least, this is like the top 30 things you should know."
Yeah, the top three things you should know is probably just it's a lot of the marketing is just like I've actually personally never paid for an ad, so I'm probably one of the
Yeah,
few people I can say that I've never paid for ads on any of my businesses. So it's just kind of getting a good maybe couple team together, a couple of your friends, and kind of partnering like that to kind of just get natural social media growth and just kind of have good products. That's the hardest part, especially with drop shipping, is to find a product that's actually going to sell and move well.
yeah, and like I completely agree with that. Or even the other day, I was speaking to someone at a betting company, and they're just talking about the sports betting world, especially in Canada, and I guess you can say the states too. You see all these different companies that are throwing all this money at ads, marketing, etc. Well, then one of the things they're mentioning was, hey, when that stops, are you still going to have that market share? Are you still going to have people using your apps, or are they then just going to go to the one that they have the highest, loyalty with? Whether it's, let's say, the Score because they use the Score app, or one that just has the best, offering, right? And let's say like for a hockey company, it's just the best quality stick, right? So
Exactly.
that's kind of I'm sure is a key thing as well. And I know you're mentioning drop shipping then led you to start this company. Before we get into that, what was your hockey career like in that aspect? Because I know you're mentioning how you started playing junior all over, Connecticut, Florida, etc. What was that like? Because I know that's some experiences that a lot of people probably interested working in sports never really got to have themselves.
Yeah, hockey's it's a pretty difficult sport. I don't know if you know too much, but hockey's like it's really politics wise. So I was kind of struggling, kind of getting to higher levels that I knew I kind of deserved at younger ages. And it was hard for me to get certain places due to that. So I was kind of all over the place and went to a couple of those, I guess, summer tournaments, and teams started actually reaching out to me. So I went to Florida first, and that was kind of my first time away from home, like completely so far away from home that then that was kind of the opening route. And then I did extremely well in Florida, and then midway through Florida and went up to Connecticut, and then I went all the way to junior A up in Ontario, the OJHL.
Yeah.
And then after that, I ended up from the OJHL. I had a pretty good season, and then the QMJHL, like a major junior in Quebec team, called me up, Acadia Bathurst, and then that was it was weird because I was mid-COVID, so I didn't get too much playing time in, even though I was there for like 6-7 months. There wasn't too many games going on during those times.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things I kind of wanted to ask you about, just, I've had guests where they've worked from different areas. They've obviously maybe traveled as well, just from, moving from their home country to another one. What was it like playing hockey and I guess technically working there as well in the States? Because I know I lived there once for a year. And even though it was just, a couple hours south from where I am now, it was a huge culture shock, right? Where I was in grade 7 and they were asking me what my parents' political parties were, and I had no idea. I just said I was Canadian. So what was it like for you, living in Florida and Connecticut? And like, what was your experience like?
It was different. I really loved, obviously I love Florida. It's just coming from cold winters nonstop. Florida it was different to play hockey in the warm nonstop. And I could wear shorts to practice. It was just completely different.
Yeah.
But the States.
Go ahead. No.
Yeah, but the States wise was just it was kind of eye opening. I kind of enjoyed it in some senses a lot more than Canada, as I felt like it was more skill based down there on the way you move up levels and that type of stuff. It was more skill based other than like politics. And yeah, exactly. That's what I personally felt is easier for me to move higher in the States.
No, that makes sense. I've definitely heard of myself just being Canada and just interacting with other people. It's almost who or then this parent pays X amount, or there's one thing and the other, and then they know this agent's pushing them. So that makes a lot of sense. And I guess before we then start moving into Swift, you're talking about your time at Acadia, obviously very different from Florida. When did your thought process start coming in for starting a hockey stick company? I know you said drop shipping, but through these, maybe years of playing in Florida, then Connecticut, and then Acadia, when did that idea first spark?
So basically, I kept seeing people break sticks, and it was like obviously it's a nonstop thing, and it happens probably every time you're on the ice. You see at least one person break a stick, but the sticks people want to be using are the $300-$400 sticks that are getting the good lightweight quality and the high quality and all of that. So I was kind of something that when I came across, it was something I kind of had to do to kind of make a good quality stick at an affordable price.
Yeah, and like, was that something where that like question? Obviously, you're saying it started popping up because you're just seeing it happen everywhere. But was it ever where you felt the hurdle of, hey, how am I gonna start a hockey stick company and compete with these major brands, or was it more so just, hey, one thing at a time? You started doing research, and as kind of started finding out more and more, you're like, hey, like this is kind of doable.
Yeah, it was kind of just finding more and more out, and I just kind of doing my research and already knowing obviously a lot of suppliers that I was using pre-drop shipping and just kind of knowing the marketing game and the whole e-commerce game pretty well. That I just kind of came across after a little bit, just starting so many businesses, and that was obviously one that was going to be more deep to me, other than selling smaller products, and that don't really mean much to me.
Yeah. And how does it work in regards to finding that manufacturer, right? Because let's say, I'm sure there's going to be people that end up listening to this episode, whether they're interested in, maybe starting a competing brand to you, hopefully not, or like, let's say gloves or cleats. Or I remember when I was in Cégep, because I grew up in Quebec, we had to do a business plan for some type of business. And my idea was to create some type of Under Armour that has a little elasticity where your legs kind of come up faster, right? Where I noticed when I played football, I had like these tight, compression shorts that had like elastics and felt like my legs, just because of the compression elasticity, it was almost felt like it was moving faster. So let's say someone had an idea like that. What types of ways? I know you're saying from your previous connections, but how would someone start with finding that supplier?
Yeah, truthfully, it's a lot of just nonstop research, just kind of going through the different platforms and that type of stuff, just researching and researching, just kind of figuring out. I personally, I went through many different platforms, kind of figure out Alibaba, AliExpress, and kind of the bigger ones deeper, and just personally contacting the bigger manufacturers and kind of figuring out what they can do also.
I guess I know you're saying like one thing led to another. You started learning and finding out more and more about how to, make this a reality. What then transpired to where, hey, this is my first batch of sticks, and you kind of maybe got to feel it for the first time? What was that like?
That was surreal. That was probably the best moment one of the moments I have probably ever had in my life. Just kind of seeing my own stick kind of being there, and personally, I was getting to use it because at the time I was still playing, so I was being able to use it at a high level, and kind of that's probably the first person I've ever seen using my own stick company at any level. So it was, it was a pretty surreal moment. And then I've obviously gave out a bunch of sticks at the beginning to kind of get the word out. And then I started selling a lot more, and I started seeing my stick just random places. Like I would go to the rinks and kind of see people using my stick and holding my stick. And that was kind of the moment for me that I kind of knew this was obviously beginning of something big. Yeah, everybody was kind of reaching out to me, kind of looking for it to be successful at a young age. I have dealt with, like, especially in the major junior league in Quebec, they do have a lot of stick rules where you can't use certain sticks and that type of stuff. So that was obviously a factor on just practicing, even, or can't use certain sticks to practice. But for a bit I used it, but it was just obviously the Lonzo Ball thing that's a big one. So that was kind of how I felt, and it was such a big deal to kind of be especially the first and the only person to kind of use my own stick.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's a moment that you're forget. So I guess since then, you kind of catch up, right? Obviously, maybe that's been a couple of years now. What's wired the business? Like, maybe you can just share, hey, like, this is what Swift Hockey is, so we can share with everyone listening.
Yeah, so as of right now, I think we're just a year and a month as of now, and we have just been growing and growing and growing. Me and my team are trying to make hockey just affordable for everybody. So sticks break or constantly, and they're made to break. Obviously, you never know if you're going to get a slash in a game or whatever is going to happen in a game. So hockey sticks are made to break, but people shouldn't be repeatedly spending $300-$400 on one stick when it's just not affordable for everybody else to get high quality sticks at that price.
Yeah, and how are you guys, are you seeing it? I know you're seeing it initially too, around different rinks. Is it where you're looking at getting to, major stores as well, or what do you have to work for 2023?
Yeah, for this year, it was kind of like we're just gonna keep rolling. As of right now, we've obviously, I kind of told you at the beginning, haven't paid for no advertisement and stuff like that. We've been all kind of natural. So we're doing pretty good, just selling what we have, and I've never heard any bad feedback with the sticks. So it's just kind of, obviously, we're getting ready for the launch of our goalie stick, which should be really big. And then we have some goals in the future that we're hopefully trying to get to, but as of right now, it's just kind of pushing the current line we've came out with, and then later in the year we'll probably release another line. But it's just as of right now, it's just kind of getting our name out there as much as possible.
Awesome. Maybe we can kind of get it before we kind of have those questions I love for everyone to kind of ask at the end of the podcast. Where can people Swift hockey sticks where they go to?
Yeah, so as of right now, we're strictly just online. We're thinking about going into retail, but it's kind of obviously a pretty hard game to get into retail and be successful in retail. But as of right now, we're just strictly online sales and kind of just we have a couple of team deals we've been making, just kind of help other teams kind of help get players to use our sticks and that type of stuff. So that's kind of our main spot, is just online e-commerce at our website, Swift Hockey.
Yeah, and that's swift-hockey.com, right? So people can
Correct.
do out
Yes.
there.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Perfect. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Super cool too, right? Where I think that's a lot of times where, myself, I always kind of wanted to be a professional athlete with some aspects, but then getting to those business courses or even just kind of thinking that aspect, hey, like, what could I create? So kind of hearing your story and how you're able to do that, it's super awesome to kind of see all that transpire. But before I let you go and wrap it up, I have 2 questions I'd like to ask every single guest, just kind of put on a nice bow on it. So I'm pretty set that I'm going to live until I'm 103. I'm going to, think back on a rocking chair about all these amazing things I was able to do in my career. If you were to be able to live until you're 103, what's one moment in your career so far that would stand out that you would always remember, especially at that age?
Yeah, so honestly, that moment has been not too long ago. It was when I went into the rink, my local, the rink in Oshawa. I went into that rink just for like a random skate midday, and I saw 2 guys using the stick that I was about to go on the ice with, and I've never seen them. I've never heard of them before, and that was kind of something that I'll never forget in my life, because that was kind of the moment that I knew this is going to be something.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's awesome. And that's something where it was like just 2 random people, and it was like your first experience, like, hey, wow, like this is actually starting to get some traction where you're actually seeing it in let's say, the flesh.
Yeah, exactly. That was the first time I've ever seen somebody use it.
Oh, that's awesome. And I guess the last question then, kind of now going back in the past, obviously you and I are both younger people in this business space. Obviously, we can still kind of go back, say 16, 18-year-old versions of ourselves, and that's what we've been able to learn so far. If you were able to go back, speak to 16, 18-year-old version of yourself, what's something you would, a piece of advice, this is something I've been able to learn, and I want you to keep.
Truthfully, I wish I would have started earlier. I wish I would have worked a lot harder at younger ages. Maybe I would have been in different places if I put more work in, especially into hockey, not even just business alone. If I put a lot more work in at younger ages that I just wasn't really interested in doing, as it was just different. That's where my mindset was at that time. But obviously that's something I would give my advice, to just keep working harder, and obviously try and keep starting businesses at younger ages, which would have been ideal.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot. I'm sure that's probably one of the reasons why you've been able to kind of just get positioned now, right? You're still able to. So I'm having issues today with human scenes. The internet is not letting this happen, and this is the first time this has taken place. Can you still hear me? Is this working?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll just repeat that and kind of see that. Lots of issues today with the internet. That's wild.
Yeah, I know.
30, 10, 2. I'll just repeat that. Yeah, no, that's awesome. It makes a ton of sense, right? Where I'm sure just having those, thought process of, hey, like starting earlier just kind of motivates you to kind of do that a little bit more now. But no, I think that's a great piece of advice to have, where, sometimes myself, you kind of beat up on yourself, being like, hey, like, should have done this or should have done that. But I think that's part of it, of how you're able to get to where you are now. But I'm glad we're able to connect and kind of hear further. But unless there's anything else you'd like to share, I really appreciate it. And obviously for everyone listening, check out Swift Hockey.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's about all. There's not.
Anything else you'd like to add there?
Yeah, no, we're just trying to kind of grow as big as possible. That's the goal. Kind of change the hockey stick game where we're giving the best quality sticks at the lowest price that I think you can ever find.
Thank you, and that's it for today's episode.